The trap of working hard and still staying broke. There is a strange kind of exhaustion that nobody teaches you how to name. It is not just physical tiredness. It is not just stress. It is not just needing a weekend, a vacation, or a few hours of sleep. It is the feeling of doing everything you were told to do and still watching your life refuse to move. You work. You show up. You answer messages. You solve problems. You stay late. You keep going even when your body is asking you to stop. And then the money comes in. For a few hours, maybe a few days, you feel some relief. Then the bills arrive. The automatic payments hit. The card balance is still there. The rent is due. The small expenses start appearing. The things you bought last month are still asking to be paid for. The things you need this month are already waiting. And suddenly the money is gone. Not violently, not dramatically, just gone. And the worst part is not even that the money disappeared. The worst part is that you are tired again, and nothing seems to have changed. That is the trap, not poverty in the dramatic sense, not some movie version of failure, not sleeping under a bridge, not having nothing. The trap is more subtle than that. The trap is having income, but not power, having a job, but no margin, having payments, but no ownership, having movement, but no progress, having a life that looks functional from the outside, but feels fragile from the inside. This is where most conversations about money become too shallow. People say, work harder. People say, save more. People say, stop spending. People say, invest. People say, build discipline. And some of that is true, but it misses the deeper problem. Millions of people are not broke because they are lazy. They are broke because their entire financial life is built to convert effort into maintenance. Not freedom, maintenance. Maintaining the apartment, maintaining the car, maintaining the lifestyle, maintaining the payments, maintaining the image, maintaining the illusion that things are under control. And maintenance can look very responsible. That is what makes it dangerous. A person can wake up early, go to work, pay bills, avoid big mistakes, look normal, look stable, look like an adult who has everything under control, and still be building nothing. Because the question is not only, how much do you work? The deeper question is, what does your work become after you get paid? That question is brutal. Because if your work becomes rent, food, transportation, and survival, that is one reality. But if your work becomes debt payments, impulse spending, status purchases, emotional relief, and a lifestyle that grows every time your income grows, that is another reality. And if your work becomes savings, skills, investments, options, lower debt, and more control over your future, that is a completely different life. The same paycheck can feed 3 different systems: a survival system, a consumption system, or a freedom system. Most people are not taught the difference. They are only taught to get income, get a job, earn more, get promoted, work overtime, find better opportunities. Again, that matters. Income matters. But income is not the same as wealth. Income is motion. Wealth is what remains. And if nothing remains, then your income is not building your life. It is just passing through you. That is one of the most uncomfortable truths in personal finance. You can make more money and still become more trapped. Because a higher income can create more freedom, but it can also create a more expensive cage, a nicer apartment, a better car, a higher standard, more subscriptions, better restaurants, more expectations, a more convincing version of success. And at first, it feels like progress. Of course it does. You are finally able to buy things you used to postpone. You are finally able to say yes more often. You are finally able to feel like you are not behind. But then the new life becomes normal. The better car becomes normal. The nicer food becomes normal. The more expensive phone becomes normal. The weekend spending becomes normal. The upgraded lifestyle becomes normal. And once the new level becomes normal, cutting back feels like failure. That is the psychological trap. What was once a luxury becomes your baseline. What was once a reward becomes your identity. And when spending becomes identity, financial discipline starts to feel like humiliation. This is why so many people do not actually want financial freedom. They want a more expensive version of emotional relief. They want to feel better. They want to feel respected. They want to feel like they finally made it. They want to feel protected from the shame of being ordinary. They want to feel ahead of someone else. But money used to repair identity wounds is never enough. Because identity wounds are hungry. They will ask for another purchase, another upgrade, another symbol. Another trip, another device, another version of yourself that looks closer to the person you wish people saw. And that is how a person can work very hard and still stay financially weak. Not because every purchase is wrong, not because pleasure is bad, not because enjoying life is irresponsible, but because the money is being asked to do a job it cannot do. Money can buy comfort. It cannot permanently cure insecurity. Money can buy access. It cannot automatically create freedom. Money can buy nicer things. It cannot save you from a system that sends every dollar back out the door. That is the real subject here. Not budgeting in the boring sense. Not some moral lecture about coffee, clothes, cars, or dinners. The real subject is this. Who captures the value of your work? Because every time you get paid, the value of your labor is released into the world. Then it starts moving. Part of it goes to basic needs. Part of it goes to obligations. Part of it goes to the past, through debt. Part of it goes to emotional relief. Part of it goes to status. Part of it goes to convenience. Part of it disappears into things you barely remember. And maybe, if there is anything left, a tiny part goes to your future. That is backwards. Your future should not receive the leftovers of your exhaustion. Your future should be one of the first names on the list, not because you should hate the present, but because a present that consumes everything creates a future with no defense. And a future with no defense eventually becomes another stressful present. That is the loop. The present spends, the future pays. Then the future becomes the present and spends again. Then another future pays again, over and over. And eventually a person says, "Why do I feel like I am always starting over?" Because financially they are. Every month begins with the same hope. Every month ends with the same pressure. Every raise disappears into the same pattern. Every bonus gets absorbed. Every attempt to change gets postponed. And because the person is still working, still earning, still functioning, the trap does not look urgent enough to confront. That is why this kind of trap can last for years. A financial disaster gets attention. A slow financial leak becomes a lifestyle. And most people are not ruined by one catastrophic decision. They are drained by hundreds of unexamined decisions, small upgrades, small debts, small subscriptions, small leaks, small acts of avoidance, small purchases made to feel better, small promises to fix things later. One by one, they look harmless. Together, they shape a life. This is why the first real financial skill is not investing. It is not choosing stocks. It is not understanding markets. It is not knowing economic vocabulary. It is not pretending to be sophisticated. The first skill is seeing. Seeing where the money goes, seeing what your lifestyle actually costs, seeing how much of your income is already owned by past decisions, seeing which purchases improve your life and which ones only numb it, seeing whether your work is building anything beyond survival. Most people avoid this because seeing creates discomfort. And discomfort is exactly what many people use spending to escape. That is the irony. A person avoids looking at money because money stresses them out. But not looking at money is part of what keeps the stress alive. Avoidance does not create peace. It creates delayed anxiety. The bill still exists. The debt still exists. The pattern still exists. The leak still exists. The future still arrives. So the question is not whether the truth will appear. The question is whether you will look at it early enough to still have options. Options are the real currency. Not money by itself. Options. Money matters because it can create options. The option to leave. The option to wait. The option to say no. The option to invest. The option to learn. The option to recover from a problem without panic. The option to take a risk without destroying your life. The option to stop tolerating things you only tolerate because you are financially cornered. That is the foundation of freedom. Not luxury, options. A person with options walks differently. They do not need to prove as much. They do not panic as quickly. They do not accept every bad condition. They do not confuse urgency with destiny. They can think. They can breathe. They can choose. And choice is the part of money that rarely gets advertised. Advertisements sell lifestyle. Real financial strength gives you choice. Those are not the same thing. A lifestyle can impress people while making you weaker. A choice can make your life quieter while making you stronger. This is why margin matters. Margin is not glamorous. Nobody posts a photo of margin. Nobody says, "Look at this beautiful gap between what I earn and what I spend." Nobody gets applause for not using credit. Nobody gets admired for having 3 months of expenses saved in a boring account. Nobody claps because you did not upgrade something that still works. But margin is what keeps your life from collapsing under normal pressure. Margin is the space between you and panic. It is the space between an emergency and a disaster. The space between a bad week and a financial crisis. The The space between a job problem and immediate desperation. The space between an opportunity and having to say, I cannot. Without margin, everything is louder. A car repair is louder. A medical bill is louder. A late payment is louder. A work conflict is louder. A family problem is louder. A small mistake is louder. Because there is no cushion. Everything touches the nerve. And when every financial event touches the nerve, you do not make your best decisions. You make survival decisions. Survival decisions are not always stupid. Sometimes they are necessary. But if survival becomes your permanent operating system, you will rarely build. You will react. You will patch. You will borrow. You will delay. You will cover one hole by opening another. You will make choices that make sense today and punish you tomorrow. That is why margin is not just a financial concept. It is psychological oxygen. When you have no margin, your mind is crowded. Crowded with calculations, crowded with fear, crowded with small negotiations, crowded with what-ifs, crowded with resentment, crowded with shame. And a crowded mind is easy to sell to. That is another uncomfortable truth. The more exhausted and financially pressured you are, the easier it becomes to manipulate your desire for relief. Buy this, upgrade this, you deserve this. Do not miss out. Pay later. Only a small monthly payment. Limited time. Everyone else is doing it. Modern consumption is not built for calm people with clear priorities. It is built for tired people who want relief. That does not mean you are helpless, but it does mean you need a system stronger than your mood. Because your mood will change. Your plan cannot depend on feeling disciplined every day. Some days you will be focused. Some days you will be frustrated. Some days you will feel behind. Some days you will want to reward yourself. Some days you will want to escape. Some days you will not care about the future at all. That is normal. Human beings are not spreadsheets. But that is exactly why you need rules. Not prison rules. Protective rules. A rule that saves before spending. A rule that blocks useless debt. A rule that limits lifestyle inflation. A rule that assigns new income before it disappears. A rule that separates wants from emotional emergencies. A rule that keeps investing from becoming gambling. A rule that turns learning into a scheduled activity instead of a vague intention. Rules are not the opposite of freedom. Good rules are how you protect freedom from your weakest moments. Because your weakest moments are expensive. A tired version of you can buy things the calm version would question. An insecure version of you can finance an image the honest version does not need. A frustrated version of you can destroy a month of progress in one evening. A bored version of you can turn money into noise. A scared version of you can avoid decisions until the options shrink. So if your entire financial life depends on always being the best version of yourself, you are in danger. You need a structure that still works when you are not at your best. That is the difference between motivation and design. Motivation says, I will try harder. Design says, I will make the important decision before temptation shows up. Motivation says, this month I will be better. Design says, when money arrives, this amount leaves automatically for my future. Motivation says, I should stop using credit so much. Design says, I will remove easy access to the card that keeps hurting me. Motivation says, I need to improve my skills. Design says, every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I practice this one skill for 1 hour. Motivation is a spark. Design is a machine. And if you want your work to become freedom, you need a machine. Not a complicated one, a simple machine. Money comes in, a portion is protected. Needs are paid, debt is attacked, skills are built. Investments grow. Lifestyle is allowed to improve, but not fast enough to eat the entire future. That is a financial machine. And once that machine exists, even small income starts behaving differently. Without it, even larger income can vanish. This is why earn more is only half of the truth. Yes, earn more if you can. Increase your value. Negotiate. Learn. Build. Sell. Create. Move toward better opportunities. But if every increase becomes a new expense, then more income only feeds a bigger version of the same problem. You did not escape the trap. You expanded it. And an expanded trap can feel like success. That is the scary part. A bigger apartment can hide a weaker financial position. A nicer car can hide less flexibility. A higher salary can hide more dependence. A better lifestyle can hide more anxiety. A more impressive image can hide a more fragile life. So the question cannot be, do I look like I am doing better? The question has to be, am I actually becoming harder to break? That is a better financial question. Am I harder to break than last year? Do I have more margin? Do I have less bad debt? Do I have stronger skills? Do I have more useful relationships? Do I have more options? Do I have any asset, system, or ability that can produce value without needing every hour of my active labor? If the answer is yes, you are moving, even if nobody notices. If the answer is no, then you may only be decorating the same vulnerability. And this is where many people get angry, because they feel judged. But this is not about judgment. It is about accuracy. You cannot fix a financial life you keep describing inaccurately. If you call debt normal, you will not attack it. If you call impulse spending self-care, you will not question it. If you call lifestyle inflation success, you will not slow it down. If you call avoidance peace, you will not look at the numbers. If you call being busy progress, you will not ask what is being built. Language matters. The words you use for your money either reveal the truth or protect the lie. And sometimes the lie sounds kind. I deserve it. I will figure it out later. It is not that much. It was on sale. I work hard. Life is short. I need to enjoy myself. None of these sentences are always wrong. That is what makes them powerful. They become dangerous when they are used to silence a truth you already know. You know when a purchase is aligned with your life. And you know when it is anesthesia. You know when a debt is strategic. And you know when it is avoidance. You know when a lifestyle upgrade is sustainable. And you know when it is just pressure wearing nice clothes. You know more than you admit. The problem is not always lack of information. Sometimes it is lack of confrontation. And confrontation does not need to be dramatic. It can be quiet. You open the account. You list the debts. You cancel the leak. You choose the skill. You set the automatic transfer. You decide the next raise will not disappear. You stop pretending every desire is a need. That is how change begins. Not with a speech, with a line drawn. And the first line is this: my entire paycheck is not available for consumption. That one sentence can change a life. Not immediately, but structurally. Because the moment you decide that all income is not spending money, you create a different identity. You're no longer only a consumer of your own labor. You become an owner of part of it, and ownership is the missing word. Most people talk about money as if the goal is to afford more. But a stronger goal is to own more of the result of your work. Own your margin. Own your skills. Own your time. Own assets if possible. Own the ability to walk away. Own the ability to wait. Own the ability to choose. Because the opposite of ownership is dependence, and dependence can wear expensive clothes. You can depend on the next paycheck, depend on the credit card, depend on overtime, depend on a boss staying happy, depend on everything going perfectly, depend on interest rates not hurting you, depend on your body never getting tired, depend on a lifestyle that cannot shrink without emotional pain. The more fragile your financial life is, the more things you depend on. The stronger it becomes, the fewer masters it has. That is the real direction. Not rich versus poor. Fewer masters versus more masters. Every unnecessary debt is a master. Every uncontrolled desire is a master. Every status purchase you cannot sustain is a master. Every skill you refuse to build can become a master. Every emergency fund you never created can become a master. Every future paycheck already spent is a master. And the point of money is not to worship it. The point is to reduce the number of things that can control you. That is why building money is not only about numbers. It is about power. Quiet power. Practical power. The power to not panic. The power to not beg. The power to not accept every condition. The power to think before reacting. The power to build beyond the next 2 weeks. And that kind of power does not usually arrive through one dramatic decision. It arrives through repeated conversion. You convert income into margin. Margin into stability. Stability into confidence. Confidence into better decisions. Better decisions into assets and skills. Assets and skills into more options. More options into freedom. That is the chain. Break the chain anywhere, and progress slows down. But build the chain deliberately, and even ordinary income can start producing extraordinary change over time. Not overnight, over time. And that phrase, over time, is where many people lose interest. Because over time is not exciting. Over time does not trend. Over time does not satisfy the part of the brain that wants proof immediately. But almost everything serious in money happens over time. Debt becomes dangerous over time. Skills become valuable over time. Investments compound over time. Lifestyle inflation traps you over time. Avoidance becomes expensive over time. Small habits become identity over time. Time is not neutral. It either magnifies your system or exposes your lack of one. If your system is bad, time makes the damage heavier. If your system is good, time makes the progress stronger. So that is why the real question is not, can I change my finances this week? The better question is, what pattern am I willing to repeat for the next 3 years? Because the pattern will decide, not the wish, not the video, not the motivation, the pattern. And if your current pattern continues for 3 years, where will you be? More free? More skilled? Less indebted? More invested? More resilient? More able to choose? Or just more tired, with a more expensive version of the same stress? That is the question most people avoid. Because the honest answer can be frightening, but it can also be liberating. Because once you see the pattern, you can change the machine. And once the machine changes, the same effort starts producing different results. That is where we continue, because the next part is not about blaming your spending. It is about understanding the invisible contracts you sign every time you choose comfort today over power tomorrow. Every financial trap has a contract. Not always a legal contract. Not always a document. Not always something you sign with a pen. Sometimes the contract is invisible. You sign it when you decide that comfort today matters more than freedom tomorrow. You sign it when you tell yourself the payment is small enough to ignore. You sign it when you upgrade your life before upgrading your margin. You sign it when you trade future hours for present relief. And because the contract is invisible, people do not feel the cost immediately. That is what makes it work. A purchase today feels like pleasure. The payment later feels like responsibility. The interest feels like background noise. The pressure feels normal. And eventually, the person forgets that this pressure was not random. It was built, not in one dramatic moment. Built through agreements, small agreements, repeated agreements, agreements made while tired, insecure, bored, pressured, or trying to feel better. This is why consumer debt is so dangerous. It does not always feel like a mistake when you enter it. It feels like access to the thing, access to the lifestyle, access to the feeling, access to the version of yourself that seems closer to success. But access is not ownership. And access can be rented from your future at a very expensive price. A lot of people do not really own their lifestyle. They are renting it from their next paychecks. That sounds harsh, but look at how it works. The paycheck arrives and a part of it is already gone. Not because of what you need today, because of what you wanted yesterday. The past takes its share first. The phone, the trip, the dinner, the emergency you did not have margin for, the purchase that felt small, the balance you said you would clear soon, the thing you bought because you were tired of waiting. All of it lines up at the door of your new income. And before your future gets anything, the past collects. That is what debt does when it is not strategic. It gives the past a permanent seat at the table. And the more seats the past takes, the less room your future has. This is why the question should not be only, can I afford the payment? That question is too weak. A much better question is, how much of my future does this payment occupy? Because a person can afford something and still become weaker because of it. They can afford the monthly payment, but lose flexibility. They can afford the upgrade, but lose breathing room. They can afford the trip, but return more anxious. They can afford the lifestyle, but become unable to step away from work for even a moment. That is not freedom. That is financial fragility wearing nice clothes. And financial fragility is one of the most misunderstood conditions of modern life. People think fragility looks poor. Sometimes it does, but often fragility looks successful. It looks like a professional with a good salary and no room for error. It looks like a beautiful apartment funded by constant pressure. It looks like a car that makes people assume you are doing well. It looks like dinners, trips, devices, and photos. It looks like, I am fine, as long as nothing unexpected happens. That final phrase matters, as long as nothing unexpected happens. A fragile financial life depends on everything going according to plan. No health problem, no job problem, no family emergency, no major repair. No income interruption, no unexpected bill, no emotional collapse that turns into spending. But life does not ask permission before becoming expensive. Life interrupts, and when there is no margin, every interruption becomes a threat. This is why a high income without margin can still feel like poverty of options. You may not be poor in income, but you can be poor in choices. And being poor in choices is its own kind of prison. You cannot leave the job. You cannot pause. You cannot risk. You cannot wait. You cannot negotiate. You cannot invest consistently. You cannot make a calm decision because the bills are always standing behind you. That is the real cost. Not just interest, the real cost is reduced movement. Bad debt reduces movement. Lifestyle inflation reduces movement. Lack of savings reduces movement. Weak skills reduce movement. One income source reduces movement. Emotional spending reduces movement. And financial growth is, in many ways, the recovery of movement. You are trying to become less trapped. That is it. Less trapped by debt. Less trapped by one paycheck. Less trapped by one employer. Less trapped by panic. Less trapped by old purchases. Less trapped by the need to prove something through spending. Once you see money like that, your decisions change. You stop asking, will this make me feel good right now? And you start asking, will this make me more free or less free? That question cuts through noise. It does not mean you never buy anything enjoyable. It means enjoyment has to survive a harder test. Will this pleasure weaken me? Will this purchase reduce my options? Will this upgrade become a new minimum I cannot step down from? Will this debt make my next month smaller? Will this spending solve a real problem or only quiet an emotion? Those are adult questions, not glamorous, but powerful. Because a lot of financial damage happens when the child inside the adult controls the wallet. The child wants now. The child wants relief. The child wants proof. The child wants not to feel left out. The child wants to be seen. And that child is not evil. That child may be wounded, tired, ignored, ashamed, or hungry for recognition. But that child should not run the entire financial system. Because the child does not understand interest. The child does not understand opportunity cost. The child does not understand future pressure. The child does not understand that one emotional purchase can become months of obligation. The adult has to enter the room, not to destroy joy, to protect the whole life. That is what financial maturity really is. It is not being cheap. It is not being cold. It is not refusing every pleasure. It is not worshiping money. It is learning to protect your future from your temporary states. Because you will have temporary states. You will feel lonely. You will feel angry. You will feel underappreciated. You will feel behind. You will feel exhausted. You will feel like you deserve more. You will feel like everyone else is living and you are only planning. Those feelings are real. But if every feeling gets direct access to your bank account, your future will always be under attack. So the real skill is not just budgeting. The real skill is emotional separation. This purchase is not an emergency just because I feel urgency. This desire is not a need just because I feel deprived. This upgrade is not progress just because it changes how I look. This debt is not harmless just because the payment is small. This income increase is not permission to expand everything. That is how you begin to recover control. But control alone is not enough. You also need growth. Because there is a version of financial advice that becomes too focused on cutting. Cut this. Cancel that. Spend less. Reduce more. Live below your means. Important, yes, but incomplete. You cannot shrink your way into every dream. At some point, you have to expand your capacity, not your lifestyle first. Your capacity, your ability to earn, your ability to solve problems, your ability to produce value, your ability to sell, your ability to communicate, your ability to use tools, your ability to understand people, your ability to build systems, your ability to create something that other people want. This is where many hardworking people get stuck. They confuse effort with market value. They are not the same. Effort is what it costs you. Market value is what your work is worth to someone else in a specific context. That can feel unfair, because a person can work extremely hard and still be paid poorly. Another person can work fewer hours and earn more because they solve a more valuable problem, or because they operate closer to money, or because they have a rare skill, or because they know how to negotiate, or because they own part of the system instead of only serving it. This does not mean the second person is morally better. It means the structure is different. And if you want money to change, you have to study structure, not just effort. Where does the money flow? Who captures the value? What skill is scarce? What problem is urgent? What result do people pay for? What can be repeated, scaled, sold, or owned? What do you know that others need? What can you learn that increases your bargaining power? These questions are uncomfortable because they remove the romance from hard work. But they also create opportunity. Because if market value can be built, then your income ceiling is not fixed forever. It may be difficult to raise, but it is not sacred. You can add a skill. You can change your position. You can move closer to revenue. You can learn to sell. You can learn to communicate better. You can build an audience. You can offer a service. You can create a product. You can specialize. You can become harder to replace. Hard to replace is a financial advantage, not because you are special in a vague motivational sense, because replacement risk affects bargaining power. If anyone can do what you do, the market pushes the price down. If fewer people can do it well, your options improve. If you combine useful skills, you become more flexible. If you can produce a measurable result, you become more valuable. That is why skill building is not self-improvement decoration. It is financial defense. A skill is portable. A skill can travel with you. A skill can survive a job change. A skill can create side income. A skill can make you more useful inside your current work. A skill can help you build something of your own. A skill can make your savings rate easier because income can grow. But the skill has to become real, not just consumed. This is a major trap of modern learning. People watch content about skills and feel productive. They save videos. They buy courses. They collect notes. They follow experts. They imagine a future identity. But they do not practice enough to become useful. And the market does not pay for the feeling of learning. It pays for applied ability. So the question is not, what am I studying? The question is, what can I now do that I could not do before? That is the proof. Can you write better? Can you sell better? Can you edit better? Can you analyze better? Can you speak better? Can you design better? Can you negotiate better? Can you build better? Can you attract attention ethically? Can you solve a painful problem for a real person? If the answer is yes, your financial life has gained an asset. Not an asset on a bank statement yet, but an asset inside you, human capital. And human capital is often the first asset available to people who do not start with money. You may not have inherited wealth. You may not have a big investment account. You may not own property. You may not have a business yet, but you can build ability. And ability can become income. Income can become margin. Margin can become investment. Investment can become options. Options can become freedom. That chain is slow, but it is real. And it is much more reliable than waiting for a miracle. Now, once you understand skill, the next step is diversification. Not because everyone needs 10 businesses. That is another internet fantasy. Most people do not need 10 income streams tomorrow. They need one stable base and one serious path toward a second source. That is different, because the phrase multiple income streams often gets abused. People make it sound like you should be doing everything at once. A job, a business, a channel, a store, trading, real estate, digital products, consulting, affiliate marketing, coaching, and somehow also sleep. That is chaos. Diversification should not mean scattering your attention until nothing grows. It should mean reducing single-point failure over time. If one source disappears, your entire life should not collapse immediately. That is the goal. At first, the second source may be tiny, almost embarrassing. A small client, a small project, a small investment habit, a small product, a small audience, a small skill offered on weekends, a small service tested with people you know. Do not despise small beginnings. Small is where reality begins. A fantasy can be huge because it does not have to survive contact with the world. A real project starts small because it has to learn. It has to learn what people want, what they ignore, what they pay for, what you can deliver, what you need to improve, what is sustainable, what drains you, what has potential. That learning is valuable, even before the money is meaningful. Because a person with one income and no experiments often feels trapped. A person with one income and a growing experiment feels different. They may still be far from free, but they are no longer completely passive. They are building a door. And psychologically, building a door matters. It changes how you experience your job. It changes how you experience your income. It changes how you experience time after work. It changes how you experience sacrifice. Because now the job is not only where your life is spent. It can become the engine that funds your exit options. This is a mature way to think, not quit everything and follow your passion. That advice can be irresponsible. A better approach is, use stability to build optionality. Use your current income to buy skills. Use skills to test opportunities. Use opportunities to create secondary income. Use secondary income to reduce dependence. Use reduced dependence to negotiate life differently. That is not romantic, but it is strong. Because many people do the opposite. They hate their job, but spend in a way that makes the job more necessary. They resent dependence, but finance a lifestyle that deepens dependence. They dream of freedom, but every paycheck is already assigned to the cage. This is the contradiction that has to be confronted. You cannot claim to want freedom while feeding every habit that makes freedom less possible. That sentence may sting. Good. Some sentences should sting if they are true, because comfort has a way of making people gentle with their own contradictions. And money punishes contradictions. If you say you want to invest but spend every increase, the contradiction will show. If you say you want peace but keep debt alive, the contradiction will show. If you say you want options but never build a skill, the contradiction will show. If you say you want independence but need every purchase to prove your worth, the contradiction will show. Money is honest in a brutal way, not morally honest, mathematically honest. It reflects patterns, eventually. Maybe not this week, maybe not this month, but over time, the pattern appears, and this brings us to time. The part of money that almost everyone respects too late. Time is the amplifier. It makes debt heavier. It makes skill stronger. It makes investments meaningful. It makes bad habits expensive. It makes good habits powerful. It makes avoidance dangerous. It makes small differences enormous. At the beginning, almost nothing looks impressive. You save a little, and it feels tiny. You invest a little, and the movement looks meaningless. You practice a skill, and you still feel incompetent. You pay debt, and the balance still annoys you. You build a side project, and nobody cares. You reduce spending, and your life does not magically change. This is the invisible phase. Most people quit here, because the invisible phase does not reward the ego. It does not give you a dramatic identity. It does not give you proof to show others. It does not feel like success yet. It feels like effort without applause. But almost everything worth building has an invisible phase. A body getting stronger has one. A business has one. A language has one. A relationship has one. A portfolio has one. A reputation has one. A skill has one. The people who build money are not always the smartest. Often, they are the ones who can keep doing useful things through the invisible phase. That is a rare ability, because it requires faith without fantasy. You are not pretending results are guaranteed. You are simply respecting the math of accumulation. Debt accumulates. Skill accumulates. Trust accumulates. Money accumulates. Reputation accumulates. Confidence accumulates. Options accumulate. The question is, what are you accumulating? Because everyone is accumulating something. Some people accumulate assets. Some accumulate excuses. Some accumulate debt. Some accumulate skills. Some accumulate regret. Some accumulate margin. Some accumulate proof that they can trust themselves. Some accumulate a lifestyle they can barely carry. You are always building a future. The only question is whether you are building one you will want to live in. And if that sounds dramatic, good. Money is not everything, but your financial patterns quietly shape a lot of everything. They shape where you live, how much stress you carry, how much nonsense you tolerate, how much risk you can take, how well you sleep, how you respond to emergencies, how dependent you feel, how much time you can buy back, how much of your life is chosen, and how much is forced. That is not small. So no, this conversation is not about becoming obsessed with money. It is about refusing to let money disorder quietly steal your choices. There is a difference. Obsession says money is the meaning of life. Financial maturity says money is not the meaning of life. But lack of control over money can damage too much of life to ignore. That is the balance. And from that balance, a practical system becomes necessary. Not a perfect system. A system you can actually live with. A system that gives every paycheck a job. Some money for needs. Some money for protection. Some money for debt reduction. Some money for skills. Some money for investment. Some money for enjoyment. Yes, enjoyment. Because a system with no joy will eventually be sabotaged. If your plan requires you to become a machine, it will fail. You are human. You need pleasure. You need rest. You need beauty. You need meals with people you love. You need small rewards. You need moments that make life feel alive. The point is not to remove joy. The point is to stop confusing joy with financial self-harm. A planned pleasure is not the enemy. An emotional leak is. A meaningful purchase is not the enemy. A purchase made to silence insecurity is. A sustainable lifestyle improvement is not the enemy. A lifestyle upgrade that steals your margin is. That distinction will save you more than extreme discipline, because extreme discipline often collapses. Clear distinction lasts longer. Now, what should a person actually do? Start with the numbers, not forever, for a defined period. Track everything for a month, everything. Not because tracking is exciting, because reality beats memory. Memory lies. Memory forgets small expenses. Memory minimizes patterns. Memory protects your ego. Memory turns repeated behavior into just this once. Memory makes you feel more controlled than you are. Numbers do not solve everything, but they remove fog, and fog is expensive. Once you see the numbers, identify the categories: needs, useful expenses, joy that is worth it, debt, waste, emotional spending, status spending, forgotten spending, future building money. That last category is the one that matters most. How much money is building your future? If the number is 0, that is not a reason to hate yourself. It is a signal, a serious signal. It means the system is consuming everything, and a system that consumes everything must be redesigned. Then create a first rule. Not 10, 1. Maybe it is. 10% of every paycheck goes to future building before anything else. Maybe it is 5% if things are tight. Maybe it is 1% if you are recovering from chaos. The amount matters, but the identity matters too. I no longer give the entire result of my work away. That is the identity. Then attack one leak. Do not try to become perfect. Choose one. A subscription, a habit, a debt pattern, a category that is clearly out of control. A recurring purchase that does not improve your life. Close one leak and redirect the money. Not into random spending. Into future building. This matters because cutting without redirecting often fails. If you remove a cost, but do not give the recovered money a job, it disappears somewhere else. Money needs assignment. Then choose one debt strategy. Smallest balance first if you need psychological wins. Highest interest first if the math is hurting you most. Most stressful debt first if emotional pressure is destroying your clarity. Any of these can work if you commit. What does not work is pretending debt will somehow dissolve while you keep adding more. Debt requires a stop sign. No new useless debt while old useless debt is being removed. That one rule is powerful. Then choose one skill. 1. Not a list of everything you admire. One skill for the next 90 days. A skill that can increase income, opportunity, or leverage. And define the proof. What will you be able to do after 90 days? Not what will you have watched. What will you be able to do? That proof changes everything. Because without proof, learning becomes entertainment. With proof, learning becomes construction. Then create one small experiment for additional income or leverage. A service offer, a content project, a digital product, a client test, a portfolio, a simple investment habit, a network building routine, a practical project tied to your skill. Again, small, but real. The goal is not immediate transformation. The goal is to stop being a person with only one financial channel. You are creating another channel. At first it may be weak. That is fine. A weak channel can be strengthened. A non-existent channel cannot. And finally, protect yourself from lifestyle inflation. This is where people fail quietly. They start earning more, and the whole system relaxes. They feel safe. They feel proud. They feel justified. They start expanding. Some expansion is fine, but not all of it. Every increase in income should be divided before it is felt. A part can improve life now. A part must improve freedom later. That rule alone can change your trajectory. Because if every raise is fully consumed, raises do not free you. They only upgrade your dependence. But if every raise sends a portion to margin, debt reduction, skills, or investment, then income growth starts building power. That is the pivot, not earning more, using more income differently. Because money does not automatically respect you because you worked for it. You have to command it. And commanding money is not about arrogance. It is about giving direction. This much protects me. This much reduces chains. This much buys skill. This much buys future ownership. This much buys joy without guilt. This much stays available for opportunity. That is direction. And once direction exists, even modest money becomes stronger. Without direction, even large money becomes chaotic. This is why some people with average income slowly become stable, while some people with high income stay terrified. The difference is not only the amount, it is the structure. A strong structure makes money behave. A weak structure lets money leak. And the world is full of ways to make your money leak. So your system has to be intentional. Not perfect, intentional. The perfect system you cannot sustain is useless. A simple system you repeat is powerful. And repetition is where the real change lives. Repetition is not exciting. That is why it works. The things that change a financial life usually do not feel dramatic while they are happening. A transfer into savings, an extra payment toward debt, a night spent practicing a skill, a purchase you decide not to make, a raise you do not immediately absorb into lifestyle, a small investment you leave alone, a bad habit you interrupt before it becomes automatic. None of that feels like a movie. But financial strength is rarely cinematic at the beginning. At the beginning, it is almost invisible. It looks like restraint. It looks like patience. It looks like quiet decisions. It looks like choosing the boring thing that gives your future more room. And this is where many people misunderstand freedom. They think freedom means doing whatever they want today. But if doing whatever you want today makes tomorrow smaller, that is not freedom. That is impulse with good branding. Real freedom is different. Real freedom is when your future has enough room to not punish you for every human moment. You can rest without panic. You can say no without fear. You can make a mistake without collapse. You can take an opportunity without needing permission from your debt. You can endure a hard month without rebuilding from zero. You can think beyond survival. That kind of freedom is not built by one motivational decision. It is built by repeating a better pattern until the pattern starts protecting you. And that brings us to the most important shift in this entire conversation. Stop asking only, how do I make more money? Start asking, how do I make my current and future money produce more freedom? That question is more complete because making more money can help, but it can also hide the same broken pattern under a bigger number. A person can double their income and still have no margin. A person can receive a raise and still feel trapped. A person can get promoted and still be more dependent than before. A person can look more successful and become more financially fragile. Because more money does not automatically change the system. It only gives the system more fuel. If the system is designed to consume everything, it will consume more. If the system is designed to build, it will build more. That is why the system matters before the amount becomes impressive. And your system is revealed by what happens right after money arrives. That moment tells the truth. When money comes in, does it get assigned or does it get attacked? Does your future receive anything first or does it wait for leftovers? Does debt take the first bite? Does lifestyle expand immediately? Does your anxiety decide? Does your ego decide? Does your exhaustion decide? Or do you decide before all of them get a vote? That is the moment. The paycheck itself is not the victory. The victory is what happens after it lands, because getting paid only means value entered your life. It does not mean value stayed. And if value never stays, you will always be working for temporary relief. This is why people can be busy for 10 years and still feel like they are financially standing in the same place. They were active, but not accumulating. Activity and accumulation are not the same thing. Activity is motion. Accumulation is retained progress. You can have motion without retained progress. That is what many financial lives are. Motion without accumulation. Hours worked, but no margin. Stress carried, but no reserve. Money earned, but no ownership. Raises received, but no freedom. Skills delayed, but more consumption. Years passed, but not enough power gained. This is the part that should make someone stop, not to feel ashamed, to become precise. Because precision is the beginning of control. If the problem is vague, the solution becomes vague. I need to be better with money. That is vague. Try this instead. I need to retain more of my income. I need to stop borrowing from my future for emotional spending. I need to build 3 months of basic expenses. I need to eliminate this specific debt. I need to learn one income-expanding skill in the next 90 days. I need my next raise to increase my freedom, not only my lifestyle. Those sentences are different. They are not motivational. They are operational. And operational sentences change behavior because they tell you what to do. Now, there is one more uncomfortable layer. Some people are afraid to build financial structure because structure reveals trade-offs. And trade-offs are painful. If you choose to save, you may not buy something now. If you choose to pay debt, you may not feel rich this month. If you choose to learn a skill, you may lose leisure time. If you choose to invest, you may have to tolerate volatility. If you choose to stop inflating your lifestyle, you may have to confront your need to impress people. There is no path without cost. The question is not whether you will pay. You will pay either way. You can pay the cost of discipline now or the cost of dependence later. You can pay with temporary discomfort, or you can pay with years of reduced options. You can pay by saying no to some things, or you can pay by being unable to say no to worse things. That is the trade. And once you see the trade clearly, discipline stops feeling like punishment. It starts feeling like self-protection. You are not denying yourself. You are defending yourself. Defending yourself from debt that steals months. Defending yourself from lifestyle pressure that never ends. Defending yourself from employers, clients, or circumstances having too much power over you. Defending yourself from the version of you that wants relief now and leaves consequences for later. This is not about becoming perfect. You will still make mistakes. You will still buy something unnecessary. You will still underestimate a cost. You will still have emotional days. you will still get tired. You will still lose focus. You will still have months where the plan does not work cleanly. That is normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is recovery. How quickly do you return to the system? One bad purchase does not destroy a financial life. But one bad purchase used as permission to abandon the system can. One difficult month does not ruin progress. But one difficult month turned into, I guess I cannot do this, can. One missed investment does not end the path. But years of waiting for the perfect moment can. The system must be strong enough to forgive imperfection and still continue. That is why extreme plans often fail. They leave no room for being human. They say, never spend, never enjoy, never make mistakes, never deviate. Then real life happens, and the person collapses. A better system says, you may be human, but the direction remains. You can enjoy, but not destroy margin. You can rest, but not abandon the future. You can spend, but not pretend every desire is sacred. You can make a mistake, but you return quickly. You can improve your lifestyle, but not so fast that freedom disappears. This is sustainable, and sustainability beats intensity every time. Because a financial plan that lasts for years is more powerful than a perfect plan that dies in 2 weeks. Now think about the person you are becoming through your money. This is deeper than numbers. Every financial decision trains an identity. When you track your money, you train honesty. When you save first, you train self-respect. When you pay debt, you train responsibility toward your future. When you learn a skill, you train belief that your capacity can grow. When you invest patiently, you train emotional control. When you resist lifestyle inflation, you train independence from applause. When you build options, you train yourself not to live cornered. This is why money habits are never just money habits. They are identity habits. They teach you who you are allowed to become. A person who always spends everything may start to believe they cannot build. A person who always borrows from the future may start to believe pressure is normal. A person who never looks at numbers may start to believe money is mysterious. But a person who retains even a small part of their effort begins to believe something different. I can build. That belief is not fantasy. It is evidence. Every month you keep something, you create evidence. Every debt you reduce creates evidence. Every skill you practice creates evidence. Every investment you leave alone creates evidence. Every impulse you interrupt creates evidence. And evidence is stronger than motivation. Motivation says, I feel like I can change. Evidence says, I have changed before. That is why small wins matter. Not because small wins make you rich immediately, because they prove the system is real. And once you trust the system, you stop chasing miracles. You stop needing one perfect opportunity to save you. You stop believing one raise will fix everything. You stop believing one investment will rescue you. You stop believing one lucky break will replace years of structure. You begin to respect accumulation. That is an adult financial awakening. Not exciting, but powerful. Because people who respect accumulation eventually become dangerous in a quiet way. They stop leaking everything. They stop reacting to every advertisement. They stop needing constant proof. They stop measuring progress only by visible lifestyle. They stop handing their future to whatever feels urgent. They become harder to manipulate, and that matters. Because the modern world does not profit from your clarity. It profits from your distraction. It profits from your insecurity. It profits from your impatience. It profits from your desire to belong. It profits from your fatigue. It profits from your willingness to pay later for relief now. So when you build financial structure, you are not just managing money. You are refusing to be an easy target. That is a stronger way to see it. A budget is not a punishment. It is a boundary. A savings rule is not boring. It is a defense system. Debt reduction is not sacrifice. It is recovery of movement. Skill building is not self-help decoration. It is future bargaining power. Investing is not a personality trait. It is one way to stop relying only on active labor. Lifestyle control is not poverty thinking. It is refusing to let status eat your freedom. That reframing changes the emotional meaning of discipline. Discipline becomes less about restriction and more about loyalty. Loyalty to your future. And that may sound dramatic, but think about it. Every time you spend in a way that damages your future, you are choosing present emotion over future stability. Again, sometimes the present should win. Life is not only tomorrow. But if the present wins every time, the future becomes a dumping ground, a place where you send all consequences. Future you will pay. Future you will handle it. Future you will be more disciplined. Future you will earn more. Future you will figure it out, but future you is not a superhero. Future you is still you, with the consequences added. That should create some compassion, not fear. Compassion. Do not leave your future self buried under decisions you could start changing now. Give that person air. Give that person margin. Give that person skills. Give that person less debt. Give that person investments. Give that person options. Give that person a life that is not always one emergency away from panic. That is one of the most mature reasons to manage money well. Not greed. Compassion for the life you are still going to have to live. Now let us bring this into a practical closing system. If tomorrow you wanted to change the direction, what should happen? Do not try to rebuild everything in one day. That becomes another fantasy. Start with one audit, one honest look at the last 30 days. Where did the money go? Not generally. Specifically. Then identify the 3 largest leaks. One may be obvious. One may be emotional. One may be hidden in recurring payments. One may be debt. One may be food delivery. One may be transportation choices. One may be lifestyle pressure. One may be random spending that never looked big alone. Choose one to attack first. 1. Close it, reduce it, or put a hard rule around it. Then choose one automatic future building action. A transfer. A debt payment. An investment contribution. A reserve contribution. A skill budget. Something that happens before your mood starts negotiating. Then choose one debt or one obligation to confront. Make it visible. Do not let it live as a vague monster. Numbers, dates, interest, minimum payment, attack plan. Then choose one skill for the next 90 days. Not because 90 days will make you a master, because 90 days is long enough to stop pretending and start producing proof. Define the output. At the end of 90 days, what will exist? A portfolio? A service offer? A better resume? A set of videos? A simple product? A certification with practice? A measurable improvement at work? A small client base? A project that demonstrates ability? Make the skill visible. Then create one protection rule for future income. The next raise, bonus, or extra income cannot be fully consumed. Decide before it arrives. A portion goes to freedom. Always, because new money is most dangerous before it has a mission. And finally, schedule one review. Not every day, that can become obsessive, but regularly enough that the system cannot disappear. Maybe once a week at first, maybe twice a month, maybe monthly when things are stable. Review is how you prevent drift, because financial drift is real. You do not need to decide to go backward. You just stop paying attention, and the world will gladly decide for you. Now, if this sounds simple, that is because it is simple. But simple is not the same as easy. Easy means low resistance. This will have resistance. Emotional resistance, social resistance, family resistance, lifestyle resistance, internal resistance. You may feel like you are missing out. You may feel embarrassed to say no. You may feel impatient. You may feel tired of being responsible. You may feel annoyed that progress is slow. That is normal. But every serious form of freedom has an uncomfortable beginning. The beginning of fitness is uncomfortable. The beginning of a skill is uncomfortable. The beginning of saving is uncomfortable. The beginning of debt reduction is uncomfortable. The beginning of changing identity is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not always a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes discomfort is the feeling of leaving an old pattern. And old patterns do not disappear politely. They pull. The old pattern says, spend it. You worked hard. You can fix it later. It is not that serious. Everyone does it. You deserve to feel good. And again, sometimes you do deserve the thing. But the mature question is, can I give myself something good without stealing from something more important? That question is the line. Because there is a difference between enjoying life and using enjoyment as an excuse to avoid building one. A very big difference. Now, let us return to the person from the beginning. The person who works, gets paid, feels relief, loses the money, and starts again. That person does not need more shame. They need a different machine. They need to see where the money goes. They need to stop letting debt own the future. They need to keep a part of every paycheck. They need to build margin before trying to look impressive. They need to increase skill, not only effort. They need a second possibility, not just one fragile income channel. They need to give time a system worth amplifying. Because time will amplify something. That is unavoidable. Time will amplify your debt or your investments, your skills or your stagnation, your discipline or your avoidance, your margin or your fragility, your freedom or your dependence. The question is not whether time will pass. It will. The question is, what will time find you repeating? That is the question that should stay in your head after this ends, not because it is motivational, Because it is diagnostic. What will time find you repeating? If it finds you repeating the same leaks, it will make them heavier. If it finds you repeating the same debt patterns, it will make them more expensive. If it finds you repeating the same avoidance, it will make the truth harder to face. But if time finds you repeating a better system, it will become your ally, slowly, quietly, powerfully. That is how financial change actually works for most people. Not as a sudden escape, as a transfer of power. A little less power to debt, a little less power to impulse, a little less power to comparison, a little less power to one paycheck, a little less power to fear, and a little more power to margin, a little more power to skill, a little more power to ownership, a little more power to choice, a little more power to your future. That is the real game. Not looking rich, becoming harder to control. And this is where the channel's deeper identity matters. This kind of conversation is not for people who only want a comforting phrase. It is for people who can tolerate the uncomfortable question behind the phrase. Not, do I work hard? But, is my hard work being captured by my future or by everything that keeps me dependent? That question changes the room. Because once you ask it honestly, you cannot fully unhear it. The next time you get paid, it will be there. The next time you almost buy something just to feel better, it will be there. The next time a monthly payment looks harmless, it will be there. The next time you say, I will start when I earn more, it will be there. The next time you feel busy and call it progress, it will be there. What is my work becoming? That is the question. And maybe your answer is painful right now. Maybe your work has been becoming bills. Maybe it has been becoming debt. Maybe it has been becoming temporary relief. Maybe it has been becoming a lifestyle you can barely carry. Maybe it has been becoming nothing you can point to. If that is true, do not use it to destroy yourself. Use it to draw a line. Because the point of truth is not punishment. The point of truth is direction. From here forward, a part of your work must stay with you. A part must protect you. A part must reduce chains. A part must build skill. A part must grow. A part must buy options. A part must belong to the person you are becoming, not only the life you are maintaining. That is the shift. And no, it will not make everything easy, but it will make your effort less wasteful. And that is where financial dignity begins. Not in appearing successful, in no longer allowing your entire life force to pass through your hands and disappear. Because working hard is not the problem. Working hard with no retention is the problem. Working hard with no margin is the problem. Working hard while your future is always paying for your past is the problem. Working hard while your skills stay the same and your lifestyle gets more expensive is the problem. Working hard while every raise is swallowed by a bigger cage is the problem. So the final question is simple. The next time money enters your life, will it only visit you, or will part of it finally stay and build something that belongs to you? That is the difference. One life keeps earning and losing. The other starts converting. Income into margin. Margin into strength. Strength into options. Options into freedom. And freedom does not have to begin loudly. Sometimes it begins with one quiet decision. This time, not all of my work disappears.